all to show up in the refineries where they could not come back to the state. And so that the recovery of the oil company and the revenues of the oil company became absolutely critical, because that was a precondition for being able to create the social missions in education, health, and the programs such as Merchant Mercal with subsidized food for subsidized necessities, etc., in terms of food. So PDVSA, an absolutely essential recovery, but a whole series of companies that had been privatized under the previous neoliberal governments, have been recovered. An example of that is the electricity company, the telecommunications company, and more recently the steel company. Sidor, after a long strike by workers, it was ultimately renationalized. And similarly, the cement companies. Now, these decisions are not necessarily part of a grand plan. They occur as crises emerge, and that becomes the obvious solution. So, for example, when they were running out of cement because of all the construction necessary, to build within the country, and it was discovered that the cement companies were shipping, which were foreign-owned, multinational cement companies, were shipping cement out of the country, then what was the solution? The solution was make certain that the cement companies serve the needs of the Venezuelan people by nationalizing them. Similarly, a dairy company, because of the problems in producing milk, was nationalized. So there's this advance of state property in this respect, plus recovered factories, which you've seen here, where individual companies, went broke. And they went broke during the boss's lockout, in the end of 2002, 2003. And that, I don't know how much people know about that, but after the failure of the coup, Capital had its next try. And that next try was to use the oil company and shut down the oil company. And that would shut down all the revenues of the state. And they did it, they began it on December 2nd or December 3rd. And what they, were absolutely certain was Chavez will be gone by Christmas. No sweat, And not only was it the oil company that was shut down, and this was shut down by the managers and the white-collar technicians, not the rank-and-file blue-collar workers who, in fact, kept the thing going. Not only was that happening, but many companies, closed their doors as well. And they said, well, we're locking out our employees as part of this, economic coup attempt. But don't worry, we're going to pay you wages, when you come back, because it's not going to be long. Well, December passed, January passed, February, that lockout process began to disintegrate, and it was obvious that, that it had been defeated. But also defeated were many of the companies that had closed down, because they economically they couldn't function anymore. And so what happened was they closed, but they had workers surrounding them outside. Where are our wages? We were promised wages, etc. And so in a number of cases where these companies shut down and then tried to smuggle means of production, the equipment out to sell it because there was a value there, the workers occupied the factories instead to prevent that from happening. And once they occupied the factories, they demanded, take over the company. The state should nationalize this. The existing law, which is not, sufficient really to permit this process. The existing law says a company can be nationalized if it is deemed to be in the social interest. And so, in these particular cases, the companies were, in specific cases, nationalized. And the model that they used was to say, okay, the state will, make this, state property, but we're going to take 51% of the shares for the state and 49% for the workers who had formed as a cooperative, which I think, has proven to be a very unfortunate, formula. But that was sort of the mechanism that was happening. And one should note, I was at a meeting, where, the organized trade union said, we have 200 closed factories, and Chavez says a closed factory is a taken factory. Why aren't these, nationalized? And, the Minister of Labor answered this question, and she was Minister of Labor then, she's now Minister of Labor again. She said, you don't have to ask our permission to take these factories, but In fact, they did. They didn't take them themselves, and that's one of the problems with the trade union movement there, which is it doesn't take many significant initiatives. So there is this significant advance of social property as opposed to private, capitalist property. You've seen, the whole issue as far as the part of the social production by workers. You've seen a number of cases. Some of you on brigades, and I know that many people have gone on brigades here, may have visited the plant in Vival, which is the valve factory, and heard from Nelson Rodriguez, who was the spokesperson there. But there are also, or may have visited Alcasa. Now, Alcasa is an unfortunate example because much of what the work that was being done by Carlos Lanz and the people who were trying to create worker management in that enterprise was in fact struggled against, partly from workers themselves. Some workers did not want worker management, they wanted higher wages as their focus, and so you have this battle of economism versus control questions, which is not unique to Alcasa because it's occurred elsewhere. It's occurred in Sador as well as other places. But there has been some of the examples are really exciting. You saw Zaida Hill from Cadela, the electrical company for the Andes. Well, they are a model. It's a state company. They are a model of co-management. The workers' committees, she's the head of the union there, the workers' committees work very closely with management, which is an elected management, which in fact the president was a worker, and under those circumstances, and they work extremely closely with the communities, as she said. It's one of the sort of great examples of the potential of the worker management experience in Venezuela at this point. They've tried a lot of different experiments looking for an appropriate model. They tried first to focus on cooperatives. One of the things they discovered was many cooperatives were simply self-oriented. So, cooperatives, it's taking the kind of pattern that has existed elsewhere, trying to maximize income per worker. And so, they worried about that, and they said, well, no, we have to create something called empresas de producción social, enterprises of social production. And these will be different from, capitalist enterprises or cooperatives because they will have to make a commitment to the community. They will have both worker management, but a commitment to the community. Well, a lot of these didn't work out at all. A lot of these companies that, especially the private capitalist companies would say, okay, well, we'll become an empresa de producción social, and that will help us get orders from PDVSA and various state companies, if we're doing that. And furthermore, we'll give a donation to the community, and we'll also give shares to workers, and that'll be how workers are involved. So it's like, they give shares to workers, which, doesn't change the relations of production at all, and they would, make a commitment to contributions to the community, which are basically taxes.